Alright, so today I'm going to do a video response to someone called Dustin Nunn. I found out about this guy because he made a comment on Damien's most recent video on UTF, or his second to most recent video on UTF, and he was listing a bunch of reasons why he disliked UTF, but all of the reasons basically were just flippant political reasons, not reasons, in my opinion, to really dislike a person. Um, I don't think you should automatically hate someone or dislike someone or just disregard someone altogether just because they have different political opinions than you. I think you can maybe judge like what type of a person they are maybe by some of their positions. But to just, like I said, disregard them altogether as a person and just say that you dislike them for those reasons alone, I think is very shallow and petty and whatnot. Um, and like I said, I mean, he was listing off just a bunch of political reasons as to why he didn't like UTF, not criticizing UTF based on the content of his character or his actions online or how he's treated former friends. Just, I hate UTF for political opinion A, political opinion B, whatnot, etc., etc. So I decided to do a video response to this guy's video called Why All Pro Wrestling Companies in General Suck Now, where he basically uses the same method to explain why he thinks all wrestling companies suck nowadays. Now, I've done several videos, and I've actually done one specific video on why I don't currently watch pro wrestling anymore. I have a lot of friends who still watch, and they encourage me to watch again because there's more alternatives now than there were like even 2 years ago. I know Impact's doing really well again. There's AEW. Of course, there's always been like Ring of Honor. New Japan Pro Wrestling's always been there as well. So, I mean, there's more alternatives now, especially with Impact and AEW, it seems like. I know Lucha Underground went out of business a while ago. But I'm just going to respond to this video point by point. I'm just going to play it and respond to it and stop it every time. Good old-fashioned response video. So yeah, let's get into this.
Hey everyone, today I'd like to talk to you about why all pro wrestling companies in general suck now. Because obviously they support the hypocritical Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay, right off the bat, you can see that he's not actually giving a legitimate reason as to why all pro wrestling companies suck nowadays. The basis for him to think that all wrestling companies suck nowadays is based on all of these wrestling companies supposedly sharing one political opinion, and that is that they supposedly all support Black Lives Matter. Now, I don't know if every single wrestling company has actually come out in support of Black Lives Matter. I have no idea. But again, it's a very flimsy reason to dislike a company or a creator of any type of art or product, whatever. For example, one of my favorite authors, Stephen King, I think the guy is one of the greatest literary writers of the 21st century, of the 20th century. I mean, I think the guy is just absolutely great. Like, no one else writes like him. But I can't stand the guy's politics. I don't have a Twitter, but I've actually perused his Twitter several times because Zach has a Twitter. And, it's all just Trump this, Trump that, and King is also a very, very, very big progressive and a very hardline Democrat. So, yeah, I really don't care for Stephen King's politics, and I probably disagree with him on several political positions, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to come on here and make a video saying why Stephen King sucks now, or why he's a shitty writer now just because he holds a political position. Like, that, those two things have nothing to do with the other. Just because he holds a certain political position doesn't affect his ability as a writer. Now, you could say that if the wrestling companies were all shoving, their political opinions and positions down your throat constantly on the show, then I could see maybe where the criticism might be a little bit more legitimate in terms of bringing politics into the criticism. But other than that, I don't really see the need to. I don't really see how you can extrapolate the two, really, if it's not for that reason. So I mean, unless professional wrestlers are like doing a match and then like they stop the match like in the middle of it and say, we're going to explain why you should support Black Lives Matter and why you're wrong if you don't, so or if they're just like talking about it on commentary constantly or whatever. So yeah, let's keep going.
Black Lives Matter is an evil terrorist group that's
an evil terrorist group. Now, I'm not gonna get into my position on Black Lives Matter. I know that several of my friends, especially online here on the group, in my group of friends here online, have sort of changed their position on Black Lives Matter in the wake of George Floyd and several other incidents, and that's fine. I mean, it's like you can still be friends with someone, still have a friendship with someone, or still, have a relationship with a family member, even if you have different opinions when it comes to politics or whatever else. It's what adults do. Adults are able to maintain relationships regardless of differences in opinion. It's common sense, really, to me anyways. I mean, that's just the rational thing to do. It's nonsensical to me to cut off contact with people just because they have a change of opinion or a change of heart, even if you do disagree with them now. So evil terrorist group. I think if you wanted to criticize Black Lives Matter, you could have some legitimate criticisms for them as a group, or maybe some of the actions that have been done in the name of the group. But to call them a terrorist organization is very, very, very just way, way too far out there. I think that's totally unfair. Evil, I mean, I don't think they're real. Again, that's just a matter of opinion, a very extreme opinion. I wouldn't say they're evil either, but I mean, that's very, very extreme. I think again, there can be some legitimate criticisms given, but evil terrorist organization, really, I think that's just so overdramatic. I mean, really, even if you don't agree with the movement, it's really, come on now, dude.
critical. They support black on black killing.
Do they support black on black killing? I don't know if they do or not. I haven't heard that. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think they've actually come out and said, oh yeah, we support black on black killing. I think they really just, I mean, I think their main goal is what, like, ending systemic racism in the justice system and cop violence against black people and all people for that matter, I'm pretty sure, and stuff like that. I don't think they've ever come out in support of black on black crime or any sort of violent crime against anyone for that matter, at least that I know of. Official members of Black Lives Matter anyways, but let's continue with this.
You got blacks killing blacks, and you got non-blacks who support BLM, and they're killing blacks.
Non-blacks supporting Black Lives Matter killing blacks? I've lost the plot.
And what's even worse is that pro wrestling companies support BLM, and that isn't right. And what else is even worse is that other sports companies that are not pro wrestling related are supporting BLM too. Just want to sneak that in here as well, because pro wrestling companies in general are not the only ones that support.
Give me a second.
BLM. It just goes to show you that anything that supports Black Lives Matter on TV is not worth watching.
All right, let's I'm sorry, my computer like spazzed out for a second. It's got all sorts of problems. Let me back up a little bit.
For supporting BLM too. Just want to sneak that in here as well, because pro wrestling companies in general are not the only ones that support.
I apologize. I really do. Okay.
And what else is even worse is that other sports companies that are not pro wrestling related are supporting BLM too. Just want to sneak that in here as well.
Well, who cares? Who cares if they're supporting Black Lives Matter? As long as the content, of the shows is still good, then who cares? Learn to separate the art from the artist, or whatever, or the show from the show producers, I guess would be this case.
Well, because pro wrestling companies in general are not the only ones that support BLM. It just goes to show you that anything that supports Black Lives Matter on TV is not worth watching.
And why is that? Why? Because a show or whatever other entity supports Black Lives Matter. Why does that all of a sudden make it not worth watching? Is it just because you don't agree with the position? Just because you don't personally agree with the Black Lives Matter movement? That somehow means that all of a sudden any shows or any celebrity or anyone else that supports it is just not worth watching or listening to? That's just, in my mind, that's completely nonsensical. Again, you can separate the art from the artist, or the content from the content producer. Again, that's just common sense, rationality. You're not really giving any legitimate criticism to any of these wrestling companies. Like, not that, well, the characters are one-dimensional, or the storylines are lazy writing, or characters being inconsistent, companies relying too much on certain guys for too long, certain guys being pushed for way too long and given too many opportunities for way too long, guys constantly getting brought back that shouldn't be being brought back. That's kind of weird, but you get my point. Legitimate criticisms, and most of those things are kind of WWE related, but I'm not going to get into that. But, there are criticisms to be had of pro wrestling companies, especially, again, in WWE's case, but I could go on about that all day. But you're not criticizing any of that. You're not getting any legitimate criticisms about the wrestling companies themselves and the content they produce. You're just giving a petty political reason because they may or may not support Black Lives Matter.
WWE is not worth watching. Ring of Honor is not worth watching. Impact Wrestling is not worth watching. All Elite Wrestling, aka AEW, isn't worth.
All because they supposedly have come out in support of Black Lives Matter. Now, they may or may not have. Again, I don't know. I haven't checked. But even if they have, so what? I mean, I've heard people say that Impact actually is worth watching. Nowadays, they were floundering there for a long while, but I've heard they've really built themselves back up. With the addition of a lot of new, fresh talent. AEW, same thing. I hear that they're, a pretty, solid product, pretty solid new product on the scene. Again, Ring of Honor has always kind of been there. Which you can have legitimate criticisms of Ring of Honor, too, because Ring of Honor's storylines have always been kind of, for the longest time anyways, have been kind of simplistic. Ring of Honor has great wrestling, like probably some of the best wrestling, but their storylines and characters are kind of generic and cookie cutter. At least they always have been. Maybe it's different now, but it's always been kind of like, generic face and generic heel and whatnot, and we're going to wrestle a match to see who's the better man and whatnot, just not, very intriguing writing and whatnot. But again, Ring of Honor appeals to a much different wrestling fan base, I would say, than like the WWE fan base or whatever. So it's a complicated, thing. But anyways,
watching NXT is not worth watching. NXT UK is not worth watching. Raw and SmackDown, those are WWE related shows, including NXT and NXT UK. They're not worth watching. The Japanese.
And again, why are they not worth watching other than the fact that they support Black Lives Matter? May or may not. Again, no reasons being given, just, oh, this company supports this, therefore not worth watching. Even if it's a good product, even if I may enjoy the product otherwise, it's not worth watching because they have this opinion. I mean, you know how just toxic that kind of mindset is? Toxic, shallow, just very, I mean, is anything not political to you? I mean, it's like the type of people that make everything political. Everything has to be political. They can't enjoy anything at all. Everything has to be political. Coming off like a right-wing NPC version of like Vosh, sort of.
These companies, I wouldn't be surprised if they're supporting BLM, because if they are, I'm not watching it.
And you don't have to. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to. But I would say if you're going to say that all those wrestling companies suck, you should give more reasons other than, well, they support this, therefore, conclusion A.
Black Lives Matter, like I said before in my videos, they are crooked. They are sick-minded, they are evil.
So how are they sick-minded and evil? Like, are you going to go into detail on that, or are you just going to keep repeating the same talking points over and over? I mean, I don't mean for this to be like a huge insult, but you really do sound like just an NPC talking head right now. I mean, it's just the same thing. They support Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. It's an evil, I mean, go into more depth on why you feel this way about Black Lives Matter, or into why all wrestling companies in general suck now, since that is the title of the video.
Me, I'll support it.
And you don't have to support it. You're entitled to your own opinion, but that it doesn't really make sense to extrapolate, again, some entity or some show supporting something, and then, in effect, that leading into, the actual content of the show itself not being worth watching. It's like the example I gave with Stephen King. Stephen King supporting a certain political position does not all of a sudden make his books not worth reading or make him like an untalented writer all of a sudden. Same thing with shows. Again, common sense.
BLM is getting out of hand.
I mean, is it?
Wrestling in general sucks now, like I said, because
And why is that?
All the companies, including the Japanese promotions, I wouldn't be surprised, support BLM.
That's not, again, not a legitimate reason. Not a legitimate reason why all pro wrestling companies supposedly suck nowadays. Completely unrelated to the actual content of the shows. And much like your comment about Undertaker Freak 1127, no comment about any of his actions, the content of his character, just the fact that he's a shitty, miserable, bitter human being in general. No, it's just that he supports these positions, therefore bad guy. Therefore, I don't like him. Therefore, I have him blocked.
I'm against terrorism.
Well, I'm against terrorism too, but saying that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization is ridiculous and just completely overdramatic. You may not like the movement, you may not agree with the movement, but calling it a terrorist organization and mischaracterizing it and slandering it just for the sake of doing that is ridiculous. and it doesn't make your argument look any better. And I guess that's the end. He pauses a lot. And... Okay, so that was my response to Dustin Nunn. Wow. This guy is a beauty. I'll tell you that. Oh, you know, and he got a comment on this video, and I think this sums it up perfectly. Dustin, you ain't wrong, but it goes beyond politics and belief, bro. It is about characters, don't you think? Exactly. Exactly my point. So, again, I mean, no reasons given as to why pro wrestling companies in general suck now. Again, you know, one-dimensional characters, lazy story writing, you know, inconsistencies with storylines, cookie-cutter faces and heels, anything like that, the format of the matches, how the championships are treated, nothing like that. It's just they support this, therefore they suck. Not the most well-rounded or mature or rational criticism. So, A for effort, though, Dustin. So, anyways, that'll be it for this one, and I'll talk to you guys later. So, peace, and have a good day.